So it's still good morning to you all. Wonderful to see such a diverse group of women gathered here in the room. So I first met Morella probably just post-COVID, so about 3 years ago, through actually my executive coach. And I was blown away. I attended one of her networking breakfasts in the city, and her story, which she's touched on some of this morning, was just mind-blowing. So I wanted to get to know Morella better, and unfortunately, life takes over. I'll tell you my story a little bit. And we only really connected about a year ago. And I've been observing from a distance the amazing work that the Global Woman Club is doing. And really wanted to do something because at HSBC, I'm going to talk about HSBC initially, our ambition is really to support the SME business sector. I've got a couple of colleagues there at the back. We've got Nicole, we've got Connor, we've got Mia, and we've got Lola. And I'm going to ask Lola to come up and speak as well. We've really want to focus on the SME business banking segment. I'm going to tell you my story first. So I was born in the UK. As you can see, I'm of Indian origin. My grandparents came from India. My parents were born in Kenya, East Africa. So a real migrant story there. And my grandfather and my husband's grandfather, actually, they all travelled to Kenya on a very well-known route to build the railways there in their teenage years. So younger than my children, actually. I've got a 16 and 14-year-old, and I just could not imagine them doing anything like that. They're growing up in a very privileged life, to be fair. And then my parents came here to study. They met when they were 17 and got married when they were 24, which is quite unusual in those days. And they got married quite young. My father wanted to be a pilot, but didn't have enough money to go to university. Ended up studying accountancy and worked for a small business, and then ended up working for Arthur Anderson's back in the day in the city. So I was born, and until I went to school at the age of 5, I didn't speak a word of English. So I was brought up in a very traditional Indian home. I don't remember that moment, and I'm told that within a couple of weeks I was pretty fluent in English, but we still speak our mother tongue at home. I teach Gujarati, which is the part of India that I'm from, on a Saturday morning to reception-age children, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. So I read, write, and can speak it. My children are learning as well, which is quite important to me. I went to the local school, and it was really ingrained in us as a migrant family. The one thing that we really have in our armoury is our education. Excuse me. So I was always sort of encouraged to do my best at school. There was no pressure as such. I was very fortunate that my father was quite forward-thinking in that I'm the youngest. They're both the youngest of 6 siblings. I'm the youngest cousin apart from my siblings. And growing up as the youngest, I was taught that anything is achievable. The opportunities that are there for, my cousin brothers were also available for me, and I was the first person in our family to go to university. So quite a big achievement back in those days. I was very, very lucky that I secured an internship with my previous employer, another high street bank with a blue eagle logo. And I spent 27 years there. So I joined on the graduate program after I graduated, and actually learned everything I know about banking there. I've got, had some of the best line managers, the best opportunities, and I'm very, very grateful for what that experience gave me. So I landed on this prestigious graduate program in the city, had no idea what I was in for. There's about 84 of us that joined the graduate program, and I thought I was very, very lucky landing in this environment in the city, exactly what I thought I wanted to do. And within the first 3 months, bearing in mind I grew up in the UK, but the culture that I come from is very, very different. Within my first rotation, I was asked to go and host clients at Silverstone. I had no idea what Silverstone was, I have to be very honest. And so off I went and swatted up, as I do, what that meant, who I was hosting. It was one of the most uncomfortable things I had to do. And so it happened, things continued like that. I was asked to go and host clients on a golf course. I didn't play golf, so I had to go and learn, and really, really put again, put time, effort into developing another skill. At one point, I was better than my husband, so that's my claim to fame. And there was many examples like that, and I just had to be really resilient, really just push the boundaries every single day. But what I found in the corporate world was the corporate world was was asking me every single day to be something different to how I'd grown up. So, I've talked about the language barrier, and I'm pretty fluent in English now, but I still have moments when people say things. I'm like, I have no idea what you're actually saying to me. And I think in my mother tongue, so I'm constantly translating. My brain's on like autopilot. And then I worked in a very male-dominated environment, and that was no issue to me. I actually didn't even think about it because I chose to pursue this career. It's what I always wanted to do. And then I started realizing that when I was in those rooms, so I worked in pre-global financial crisis, I worked in a team called Leverage Finance. And I was always the only woman in the room. I look quite young. I'm almost 50, but it's the Indian genes. As I said, I've got two teenage kids who tower above me now, and a dog. And people would just assume I was like the PA or the tea lady, or and I have no issues coming from an Indian family. I have no issues being hospitable and serving the teas and coffees and making people feel comfortable. But as I progressed through my career, I at one point became the most senior person in the room, and I was still like not really given an equal seat at the table. And that then started to make me realise that my journey was quite unusual. I had a voice, I had a seat at the table. And so what I did at my previous employer was actually speak to some very senior people on our board and say that this is my journey and I've loved it and I've learned a lot and it's made me so resilient. I wouldn't change it for anything. I've had some of the best mentors, the best line managers. One of my best line managers came from the army. He'd served in Afghanistan, and the bank and HSBC does the same, had a program to support ex-army veterans. And so the skills that he came with to the organisation from a leadership perspective, a teamwork perspective, were just incredible. And he was the one that really pushed me. He had 3 children similar age to mine, and said, you work really, really hard. You don't always take all your annual leave off. Would you consider, for example, we offer parents parental leave. Would you consider taking some parental leave over the summer? It's a really, I'm not telling you to do it, but I just want you to know that the bank would support it. For the first time in my life, I was like, wow, there's someone who actually gets me. Of course, I'd love to take a couple of weeks of parental leave and spend more time with the children, but I just didn't even know it was available. So I've been so fortunate with having these incredible people around me. So I asked the board, and I said, this is my journey. I've loved it. I've got no complaints, but actually there are so many people coming up the ladder behind me with similar experiences. I'd love to do something about it. And they said, fine. What is it that you're thinking about? What would you like to do? So I got a small pot of money, and I got an external consultancy in to do some listening groups, just to understand, the journeys of the people at the grassroots, those that are out on the front line seeing our clients. And I knew what that exercise was going to deliver, but it was really, really quite shocking. And when our board saw that, they were like, no, absolutely, we've got to do something about this. So I got some more money, and I got another consultancy in to do some coaching programs for those individuals that hadn't perhaps been as lucky as I had been with a career pathway and the mentoring and the support. And today that program is global, and it's now a program that the HR business partners run. And it really is all about providing opportunities for people that come from all sorts of backgrounds. And it could be females, it could be different ethnicities, it could be someone who has a different learning ability or neurodiversity. And it was just so powerful to be able to do that. So fast forward, I did that, and I got a lot of internal sort of recognition. One of the things I used to get told when I was very early on in my career was, you're brilliant, you're technically really good, you work really hard, you've just got to raise your profile. And I was like, what does that mean, raise my profile? If you tell me what you want me to do, I know I'm going to do it really, really well, because whatever I do, I give 100%. But my line manager at the time couldn't tell me, goes, no, you just need to raise your profile. I was like, okay, I'll just try and raise my profile. And through doing this work to try and help other colleagues, all of a sudden, I'd raised my profile. And people, were talking about these programs, and they were talking about the internal ERG that we had. I then got the feedback, your profile's got too big, you need to reel it back a bit. Right? Because I had a line into our board, I had a line into really senior decision makers. No, just spend a bit less time on doing that, and just do this. And I was shocked. I was like, wow. So it's really difficult, because for me it was about paying it forward and paying it back to those. I was very, very lucky, as I say, with amazing role models around me. Although I never had a female role model, and there's nothing wrong with it. They were always complete gentlemen. But, they were all male. And I wanted to be that female role model for others coming through the organisation. So my last role within the bank was to lead our debt structuring team across corporate investment banking. And that was huge. And that was through COVID. So you can imagine some of these large and medium-sized companies that were all, overnight in a very, very different economic environment. And being able to do that and being able to guide teams and make decisions for the bank was super, super powerful. And people said to me, it's like really amazing to actually, like for the first time ever, to see a female leader doing what you're doing and doing it, really authentically. So that's my story very, very quickly. I moved very recently to HSBC. A lot of people ask me, why have you moved after 27 years in an organisation? And I was very embarrassed to say that I didn't realise that SME businesses accounted for 99.3% of UK companies. That is huge. It is the lifeblood of the UK economy. It is the backbone, as many people say. And an SME, the government definition, is anything from zero turnover, so startup, all the way up to 25 million. Now, where we play it in the SME business banking team, and particularly in my team, is probably sort of zero to, our sweet spot is 10 to 15 million. But that's still, a very, very vast expanse of companies. And one thing we're really proud of, so the reason I moved was when I went through like 6-7 rounds of interviews or whatever it was, the leaders of this business said, we know that this segment has been very underserved for a long time, and we really want to do something about it. As well as being a commercial business, we want to give back to the communities that we operate in. And we've got a lot of partnerships. So from a small business growth program, which I think we've got a couple of banners up here, we've got partnerships with Google and Microsoft. So every room that I'm in, everywhere that I'm in, we're talking about AI and what AI can do for businesses. I've witnessed it firsthand, because those conversations were happening 3-4 years ago at the large cap end of the market. And it always takes a little bit longer for it to filter down through the economy. But the feedback we've had is that SMEs really want to put their hands around AI. They just don't know what it means, and they don't know how to do it. So our partnerships with Google and Microsoft have been instrumental in educating and taking some of the know-how to not just our clients, actually. We open these sessions up for all SMEs in the UK. We also have just recently launched a partnership with Sage. Making tax digital is very, very topical as well. There's a lot of change that's coming down from HMRC, and actually helping small businesses to navigate that. I'm very proud of this one here. There's a QR code, so feel free to scan it and join. But we also have a women's business growth initiative. And I'm sure Lola will talk about some of the stats, but less than 2% of venture capital funding goes to female founders. And these are females that are setting up their businesses and looking for capital to grow. I'm not saying that everyone needs to go down the venture capital route, but if we got to parity of 50-50%, we would add £250 billion to the UK economy. Like, that number is significant. It is so impactful, and yet we just don't have that access to finance for females. The reason that I wanted to start with that quote is there's a lot of work we're doing a lot of work with female founders, and particularly Female Founders Inc., seminars, workshops, networking events. Because the other stat that I wanted to share, and Lona and I were just talking about it, was that only 8% of female entrepreneurs and business owners feel comfortable going and talking and asking about financing for their firm, for their businesses. Now that is again such a low number. And sometimes, you know, I know from my community there was always a stigma around taking on debt. You know, people support each other in the community to grow, but people never want to take debt on. That's changing. It's changing a little bit because there is a room, whether it's you know, a commercial mortgage or whether it's just a straightforward overdraft or revolving credit facility. There is space for this stuff. If it's the right thing for the client, we'll talk to our businesses about it. But also working capital. There's so many female business founders that I've met recently. I met a wonderful lady who has a business called Lemonade Dolls. You can look her up. She spoke at one of our events recently, and she wanted to grow internationally, but had no idea how to support that working capital cycle. And we worked with her to say, look, we can fund, you know, whether it's your invoices or whether it's your so invoices from suppliers. So we have invoice financing, or whether it's you know, your debtors. There's a whole load of product and services that we can, if it's the appropriate thing to do, talk to you about. And her international expansion story was amazing. So if you get time, do have a read of how Lemonade Dolls has grown. But the best thing about the Women's Business Growth Initiative is like what the Global Woman Club's doing here, providing networking opportunities for female entrepreneurs and business owners, providing a safe space. I always found, and I never talk about this negatively, but you know, when I look back at my career, you know, people always want to recruit those that remind them of their younger selves. As you can imagine, me standing here, I never reminded anyone of their younger self because I worked in banking, and banking was traditionally a very male-dominated environment. So I didn't get those, you know, leg up, or you know, the ladder was never there for me. But what I always do is keep that ladder there for others coming up behind me. But you know, those sponsorship opportunities, or that pat on the back to say, you know what, there's an opportunity over there. I think it'd be great for you. Great promotion. And these rooms, these safe environments really provide that, whether it's just sharing your own experiences and just I was saying to my team today, I was like, I really wanted a couple of them to talk about their own journey, but it's a really safe environment. It's quite daunting just standing up in front of a room and speaking, but you do it once, you feel a bit more comfortable, you do it twice, you feel even more comfortable. And as Morella, you know, you get to the Morella stage where you do it with your eyes closed, you're a natural. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. There is a QR code here. I think we've got a couple more for our small business growth initiative here, and I'll leave this one up here for the small business growth initiative. Sorry, the women's business growth initiative is there. There we go. Small Business Growth Programme and our Women's Business Growth Initiative. Please do join. If there's anything that I've talked about that you'd like to explore in further detail, I've got some of my team there. And I'd like to ask Lola to come up from HSBC Premier Banking just to talk a little bit about, you know, what she's seeing and perhaps what we can do for you on that account as well.